prescriptions. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to goodrx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
This is former Notre Dame quarterback Brady Quinn. Here's what's trending from the iHeart Sports Network.
Presented by Staples Stores.
In an interstate rivalry matchup tomorrow, the 11-2 Eagles entertain the 10-3 Steelers. Meanwhile, Joel Embiid sustained a sinus fracture in the Sixers' home loss to the Pacers last night. Philadelphia returns Monday to visit the Hornets. The Hall of Fame wide receiver Randy Moss announced on Friday that he's being treated for cancer and has undergone successful surgery this week. I'm Bill Bryant.
Staples has amazing deals on everything you need for the holidays, from custom holiday cards and photo gifts to laptops and gaming systems, even shipping solutions. And now save up to $350 on select computers. In-store only, offer ends 12/28 on that huge holiday savings at Staples.
Portions of the following program will be recorded.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. When dining out or shopping at the grocery store, ask for sustainable seafood. By choosing sustainable seafood, you can help reduce overfishing, bycatch, loss of top predators, illegal fishing, and other harmful environmental impacts. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth. Help the planet with a tip from iHeartRadio Earth. Education doesn't just take place in the classroom. There are many ways children of all ages can learn about sustainability and the environment at home. Visit iHeartRadio.com/Earth for a list of resources, activity guides, and toolkits that are educational and fun for the whole family. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Your home for Villanova basketball is WDAS and WD273D, Fox Sports Radio, Philadelphia.
At athletic trainer Kevin Johnson over there quickly. Let's see if we can see anything on the replay here.
Oh, he just gets hit with the left arm of Matherin.
Yeah, hard hit to the face. So we will step away. Back after this.
And that was the story last night in Philadelphia as the all too familiar feeling of Joel Embiid lying on the floor showed up once again here. Oh, what a naive feeling it was to think that the Philadelphia 76ers had turned the corner on the injury issues, as we are seeing the exact opposite today, as Joel Embiid has suffered a sinus fracture, another unique injury that I personally was not aware of until experiencing Joel Embiid, and that unfortunately is the story once again. So I'm Sean Barnard here, rock with you in the second hour of the Tough Cover Radio Show. Hope you hung around for the first hour of me, Mark Henry Jr., jump through the NFL and college football slate. It's me to steer you home from here. We got about the next half hour that I'll be hanging with you, and I want to talk a lot about what went wrong with Joel Embiid, a little bit of this A.J. Brown situation, and more specifically digging into why I think social media has magnified kind of the presence and the overall feeling of all these sort of behind-the-scenes drama. We live in a different ecosystem of media, I guess you could say, and I do think this is not working out for a lot of these guys and impacting Joel Embiid and A.J. Brown pretty specifically on this. Now, to rock with Embiid here, I first just want to start off with I get the frustrations. I hear it everywhere. I hear everyone ready to move on. This is a disastrous season. There are no doubts about that. The Sixers have now dropped to 7-16. And let me remind you that this was a frustrating performance last night before Joel Embiid got injured. That was an unacceptable performance from start to finish from that Sixers team. They seem to look like a team that had not played since they've been off since Sunday. Did not look connected whatsoever. Lazy defensive possessions. But this is all bearing the lead because the story is Joel Embiid. And unfortunately, despite Jared McCain, despite Paul George, despite Tyrese Maxey, we're well aware at this point in the game that the Philadelphia Sixers go as Joel Embiid goes. And unfortunately, if that is the case, they may not be going very far these days. Now, as far as Joel as a whole, I think frustration is the number one feeling that I get from a sense of people. When I'm scrolling the timeline, when I'm trying to get a feel for the pulse for how this is being looked at by Sixers fans here, I think frustration is the number one feeling. And I get that. There's no way not to be frustrated by how things are played out. But I have this other feeling that just continues to pop in my brain, and it's just feeling bad for the dude, man. I get the concerns. Again, if you want to go down the injury history, and why not? Let's do it right here to kind of speak about the history of Joel Embiid. This all started before he even made it to the NBA. The days before the NBA draft, Embiid undergoes surgery to repair a stress fracture on the navicular bone in his right foot. This is what dropped him to the 3rd overall pick. Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker going 1 and 2, and then Joel Embiid slipping to the Sixers with that 3rd pick. Then in August 27, 2014, the Sixers front office expresses doubt that Embiid will be able to play during the entire season, and that is ultimately what proved to be the case. Then in June 2015, Embiid suffers a setback on his recovery. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting this, that the 76ers confirmed the report and has revealed that Embiid rebroke his navicular bone and will be required another surgery. Embiid then misses the entire season after another successful surgery, missing the first 2 years of his NBA career. Then in January 2017, when he did finally return to the floor, in his 30th career NBA game, Embiid suffers a fall and aggregates his left knee, causing him to miss Philadelphia's next 3 games due to swelling and soreness. Then in January 27th, just a week later, Embiid scores 32 points in 28 minutes, which would end up being the final game of his rookie season. He returns to the sideline with left knee swelling, and this was the start of these very same meniscus injuries that will come back into play here. Flash forward to February 2017. The knee swelling is labeled a product of a minor meniscus tear. Embiid is listed as day-to-day, and then shortly after ruled out for the entirety of the 2016-2017 season due to that meniscus injury. And I do think this is notable here when kind of factoring the meniscus injuries. A lot of what we take for granted when having these conversations is how much this compounds. That these meniscus injuries, you got it until you don't. That the more you scrape away at this, the more you try to clean it up, the less that becomes possible. And this started right there in the first season that he steps on the floor. So he misses the remainder of the 2016-17 season, and then flash forward to March 28th, 2018, when a collision with Markelle Fultz results in Embiid fracturing his left orbital bone and sustaining a concussion. The injury required surgery, and Embiid was placed in concussion protocol, sidelining him for the final 8 games of the regular season and the first 2 of the 2018 playoffs. Flash forward to January 6, 2020, where Embiid suffers a gruesome finger injury in a win over the Thunder. This required surgery and sidelined Embiid for the next 9 games. May 31st, 2021, Embiid takes an awkward fall in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference playoffs against the Wizards. The 76ers announced that Embiid has suffered a partially torn meniscus in his right knee, sidelining him for 1 game. Then in 2021, Embiid is placed in the NBA's COVID-19 health and safety protocols, misses 9 games as a result. Upon returning to the lineup, Embiid shares that I really thought I wasn't going to make it, detailing the toll the virus took on him. Flash forward once again to April 20th, 2022. Joel Embiid tears a ligament in the right thumb of Game 3 of the Eastern Conference playoffs against the Raptors. It is reported that the injury will require offseason surgery, but he does play through it and did hit a clutch game-winning three-pointer during that series as well. April 28th, 2022. An elbow from Raptors forward Pascal Siakam in Philadelphia's series-clinching Game 6 win results in Embiid suffering a mild concussion and right orbital fracture. Don't forget the plane ride from Joel Embiid, vibes as high as they possibly could be, and come crashing down to earth there. Flash forward once again, we get Joel Embiid's MVP season in 22-23, playing 66 of a possible 82 games, the most of his career. And then just shortly after, flash forward to January 30th, 2024. An awkward play from Warriors forward Jonathan Kuminga falls on Embiid's left knee. It is revealed that Embiid suffered another torn lateral meniscus on the play, and that injury would require surgery on his left knee. Then April 25th, 2024, after scoring 50 points in Game 3 of the NBA playoffs, Embiid reveals that he's been diagnosed with Bell's palsy, resulting in the paralysis of the face, migraines, and blurred vision. Then in preparation for his Olympics debut, Embiid brushes off injury concerns, and then we have the version of him that we have today. And then flash forward one more time to last night, and we have a sinus fracture. This is a lot of stuff. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is tough to look at all this and act like there's not a theme, that this is the same guy, the same player. But I have such a hard time doing this because this is not a situation where this is a guy being negligent to his body or not taking care of it. And you can make those cases in individual examples here. But when you scroll down talking about Joel Embiid breaking his face on Markelle Fultz's shoulder, Joel Embiid getting hit by Benedict Mathurin, coming flying in, getting ready to get a rebound. What do you do? And that's the hard conversation about Joel Embiid. Now, the bigger picture part of this is obviously the people that are sick of Joel, that they're over it. They don't see a world where you can win a championship with Joel Embiid as your focal point. And while I hear you, while the history suggests you would be correct on that, I don't see a better chance for this Sixers team really ever. That I think the brutal reality that we must all accept is the best bet for this Sixers organization is you go down with the ship that is Joel Embiid. Because walk with me here. What is the pathway? For starters, let's speak in the short term. Joel Embiid is ineligible to be traded this season. He was handed a 3-year extension in the offseason, $196 million, will be with this franchise until he is 35 years old in the year 2029. That is the reality. The pen has touched the paper. The ink has dried. That is final. That is the situation with Joel. So that means we can't even have these conversations until this summer is the potential earliest that Embiid could possibly be moved. But the rest of the NBA is not dumb. The rest of the NBA is not blind. The rest of the NBA is not in the dark about the situation with Joel Embiid. They sit and see the same exact press releases that we do. They sit and see these same exact stats and game miss and injury concerns as each and every one of us. So if you are one of these other franchise, does Joel Embiid give you a little bit more relevancy if you are the Brooklyn Nets or the Utah Jazz or the Washington Wizards? Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. But if you're looking at this from the Sixers perspective, what could you possibly get back to improve your chances of winning an NBA championship, which remains the ultimate goal here? I love Tyrese Maxey. I love Jared McCain. I think they're both exciting young players that I cannot wait to see what they fully grow into. But do I think there's a world where either one of those players could grow to be a better overall talent than Joel Embiid is? I don't. I just simply don't see it. I would love to be wrong about this. And frankly, both these guys are players that love proving people wrong and have plenty of examples of this. But realistically, when looking at the NBA as a whole, you need to have a top 8 player in the entire league to actually win a championship. Last year's Boston Celtics, I feel, are a unique example of a team that sort of lacked that top end talent. That Jason Tatum, who would be their 1A, although I know Jaylen Brown won finals MVP there, is a guy that is still, I think, even the harshest of Jason Tatum critics can acknowledge he's at worst a top 12 NBA player. I frankly think he's a couple spots higher than that. I'm not the biggest Jason Tatum guy in the world, but I do think it's indisputable. And when you talk about a malleable play style for the modern NBA, he's it. That he can play up, he can play down, he can play whatever position, he can play small ball center, which he does in stretches for them. He launches 3-pointers, which that whole entire team does. But why this worked with Jason Tatum not necessarily being this quote-unquote lead dog or head of the team in the way that many people think about it, look at the depth behind him. Jaylen Brown, very good basketball player. Kristaps Porzingis can get absolutely red hot and add something from a stretch 5 position there. Derek White is one of the incredible talents, a guy that on an any night basis can look like the best player on the floor. Drew Holiday has been a several-time All-Star, one of the best defenders across this entire league. This is not just Jason Tatum going into battle. This is a well-rounded team. Now, while you can make that same case with the Sixers team, I don't know if you're talking about that quite the same level there. But when you look at the larger scale of champions across the NBA, there is a similarity there. There is that top-end, clear-cut top 8 player in the NBA. That's how you win. I think the NBA, more than any other league in any other sport, one player changes things more than anything. That's why we see people tank for superstars constantly. Why we see people sell their soul to make this big free agent addition just at the prayer of having a chance at succeeding in the playoffs. So if you're the Sixers team, where do you find one of those that isn't named Joel Embiid? That's the tough discussion there. Now, I understand the concept. If you want to lock it up and say in your brain, there's no way that we can win with Joel, anything is better. I just don't think that is the case there. And I still think we're being short-sighted about the overall outlook for this Sixers team. But for the people that say this season was a wash, and there's strong evidence of that, they're 7-16. They're currently sitting at the standings right now that after last night's loss, they sit at 12th place in the Eastern Conference, above the Hornets, above the Raptors, and above the Wizards. The Wizards, a historically bad 3-12, a little strong historically, but regardless, a very bad basketball team there. For the people that are ready to tank for Cooper Flagg or throw everything away, the first thing to very clearly note here, the Sixers draft pick is top 6 protected. So what does that mean exactly? If it falls within the first 6 selections, the Sixers keep the pick. If it does not, it's heading to Oklahoma City, where they seemingly are collecting every single one of these talents that we are desperately searching for, or every team is really desperately searching for. So for that to happen, and let's factor in the lottery odds, how all this goes down, that the the 4 worst teams in the NBA, none of them have a guarantee of having a top 4 pick here. That's why they did the lottery, to basically avoid teams doing exactly what the Sixers did do for such an extended period of time. And by the way, so did the Thunder, who are looking like the beneficiaries of all of this here. So if that is the goal, to get a top 6 pick and retain your draft pick, you got to be so bad. You have to commit to being so bad. And I think if we want to honestly look ourselves in the mirror here, it's just not going to happen. Regardless of how bad it has been, how messy it has been, how poorly the level of basketball has been for this Sixers team this season, they're just not going to be worse than the Washington Wizards or the Utah Jazz or the Toronto Raptors or these teams that are deliberately trying to be a bad basketball team. When you have talents like Tyrese Maxey, like Jared McCain, like Paul George, I understand we may not be pushing for the championship there, but you're going to win some games. You're not going to accidentally fall into a top 6 pick there. So this is why the Sixers find themselves in such a difficult spot in the short and long term here. We don't know a ton about the outlook for Joel Embiid. I will say, when I dove down the Google rabbit hole of what exactly is this fracture in the face, mind you, the 4th time that he has broken his face in his NBA career. There's been 53 face breaks in the entire NBA, and Joel Embiid is good for 3 or 4 of them. They're not fully counting the sinus one, so officially 3 of them. I think it basically counts there. So I would consider that the case. So if that is the case there, when thinking about this Sixers team, where do you go from here? I don't see a cleaner route. I don't see any route in which you can find a player that gives you a more likely chance of winning a championship. So you gotta kind of deal with it and hope for the best at this current point. And Window going down that Google rabbit hole was certainly not encouraging for how soon he could be on the floor. We will wait until we have details from the Sixers organization, which who knows how long that takes, as they certainly have not been the top tier for communication across an organization with these sort of factors here. And by the way, if he is out and cannot exercise and needs to rest this face, the knee issues are still going to be knee issues here. There's been encouraging moments for Joel of late, but he certainly still has not been the MVP version of himself. So for the time being, we're at the jurisdiction of the doctors and waiting to see what the exact results of this are for Embiid. But a season that seems like we've reached rock bottom like 3 or 4 times right now just proves that may never be the case here. Now, I do want to transition a little bit to talk about the A.J. Brown situation in Philadelphia. And I do want to tie this back to Joel a little bit specific here. So I want to start off in looking at the Brandon Graham situation. So this has been something that has been brewing for quite some time. We've kind of have always heard the rumors of the A.J. Brown and the Brandon Graham sort of conversation here. Obviously, him and Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown specifically are guys who have had a great relationship in their past here. But Brandon Graham hops on a radio show himself and has some interesting thoughts on it. So to play those exactly here.
Complaining need to be accountable. And I'm just being honest. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he noticed, I don't know the whole story, but I know that one is trying. And I mean, 11 could be a little better with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's like, man, but things have changed. And I understand that because life happens. But it's the business side that we have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of the business. And that's where we got to do better as right now, because we know it's an issue. Everybody's seeing some things, but we need to be able to talk things out as men. You know what I'm saying? But we need to let personal stuff go and let's get right for this game, because, man, it's like a lot of stuff. Most of the time, it's just a conversation that just need to be had. But the person with the problem got to want to talk to the person other than others. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
So a couple thoughts here. My first thought and the first thing that came to my mind immediately when I saw this, Brandon Graham, man, you are too smart to be doing this. You've been around the city for far too long, a living Eagles legend. Obviously, everyone loves BG. I don't know why he would remotely think this was a good idea. And again, I think he's just too smart. So is there the part of me that believes this was calculated from Brandon Graham, that he needed to get this message out there, or was this just accidental here? Now, Brandon Graham and really the rest of the Eagles organization has done a pretty phenomenal job of walking this back. But the toothpaste is out of the tube here. The conversation has been had. You cannot take that quote back exactly. So what do we make of that here? I want to start by saying, in this era that we live in, everything is a bigger deal than it should be. Every little thing. If you scroll social media, you see whatever. Think about like the inner workings of a locker room, which once was this sanctity, this space that no one can invade. Think about throughout the years, the big deal that is made about reporters getting access, or how hard it is to get credentialed, or the things that must be kept between those four walls. That has been something that forever has been leaned on as something that is an important pillar of sports there. That really is not the case anymore. And not because, this is access to the team. This is what everyone wants. When we talk about growing viewership or getting interest in the team, this behind the scenes working is what people want to see. It is a two-way street here, that there is the good in addition to the bad, in which I'm getting at. But when there are moments like this, like Brandon Graham going on and speaking about AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts here, we get a peek behind the curtain at some things we don't want to see. And the same thing happened not too far along with Joel Embiid and the Sixers just a couple weeks ago, where they are having a disastrous start to the season. They responsibly call a team meeting a normal move, something that happens that on just about all teams. And then there's a member of the team within hours leaking word for word quotes from that exact meeting, talking about Joel Embiid being late to things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sticking up for that behavior, but I do think it is pretty unacceptable from a standpoint that sort of stuff gets out to the media directly like that. So what is kind of the outlook here as an athlete? Like, how do you deal with that? What is unique about this in today's ecosystem compared to years past? It did, to me, feel like this kind of swing of the pendulum of athletes trying to control the narrative more, which I know is a phrase that has been thrown out there plenty. We see podcasts constantly by these guys, making radio appearances, making their own social media sort of posts. I mean, we got Jared McCain running TikToks, millions of views out there. Paul George hopping on the mic after the game. Shout out Tyrese Maxey, has his own podcast right here on iHeart. Maxey on the mic, shameless plug right there. But when you go out of your way to kind of control that narrative and step out on the forefront of things to lead the charge for speaking about yourself, you also become the main story with all of this. And that's when we kind of lose some of this sense of, I don't want to say team, because everyone has their own interest with things, but it does feel like this stuff takes a life of its own in a way where it never has before. This AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts situation very easily could be nothing. This could be just Brandon Graham, his perception of things that he sees, what his comments are. And frankly, my full kind of opinion here, I think you just have to be sort of a diva to be as good of a wide receiver as AJ Brown is. I mean, look around the history, the Terrell Owens, the Randy Mosses, and all these other guys that carry a little baggage with them. And that's sort of what comes with it. Antonio Brown, another example there, Odell Beckham while he was cooking there. The guys that are these elite caliber talents, you put up for it when it's worth it. And with AJ Brown, it's absolutely worth it. There's no doubt about it. This guy remains one of the most talented pass catchers across the entire NFL. And by the way, Jalen Hurts, a guy who has provided him the opportunity to have his career numbers. That AJ Brown, let's not forget, this version of AJ Brown did not exist in Tennessee. This version of AJ Brown, this all-pro, clear-cut, top 5 wide receiver in those game conversations for the most elite, that happened once he got to Philadelphia. And there's a reason for that as well. So I understand sort of where everyone is coming from in this situation. It does feel bizarre to me that this has taken on such a life of the story as this Eagles team has won 9 games in a row and has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. But it does feel like more of a product of the ecosystem that we all have created than anything specifically that has happened internally or between these two guys on the field. Does Jalen Hurts have to play better? Absolutely. Should AJ Brown handle things probably a little differently? Absolutely. But what is the full issue here is kind of where I circle back to. I feel like so much of this ends up being created by all of us than anything from what the actual story is in itself here. And for AJ Brown specifically, just show up and keep playing, man. Jalen Hurts specifically, just show up and keep playing. Keep the main thing, as Jalen would like to say himself. That is the story of what is going on in the field. And what is that exactly? The Eagles are winning football games. That's the story. That is what is happening, that the aspirations for the season are being reached. And all this is nothing but a negative to that. Now, I'm not kind of excusing the Eagles' part in this. We see it. Obviously, Brandon Graham was the guy that said it. And again, I'm shocked that BG is the guy for a dude that has such a strong foothold on this organization, the city, et cetera, et cetera. But it is the reality of things. So I do think it's a unique kind of constraints that these athletes have to live in today's ecosystem here. That I do think that there should be more media training than ever before, that there is kind of more, I guess, bells and whistles that come with the job than I think has ever been the case. But it's also kind of the beauty of it that we love to see this, see the other sides of guys, see personality, that it isn't just about a guy that can run a 4.3 40 and you can see what his vertical reach is, that you do get an idea of what his personality is. And I do wonder, when kind of comparing this to past years, were these issues that happened before that we never found out about? Are these issues that are being driven by the exact situation that led up to it? Those are all things that I don't have the answer to, but I do think it's real interesting food for thought as things have kind of modernized in today's world. But for the leagues as a whole, for the players as a whole, for all the money that is coming in, all the growth and attention that is coming, this all tied together. So for all the complaints, it's kind of all interwoven here. So I think it's frustrating. I have some sympathy, but ultimately, this is the world that we created here. So we'll see right there. We're going to take a quick break on this side. I'm going to be back for about 5 more minutes before we sign off for the day. We've got a couple more thoughts I want to get to, so keep it locked on the other side. I'll be back talk with you. Peace.
This report is sponsored by Regency Furniture. Affordable never looked so good.
Unwrap unbeatable savings on furniture for every room during Regency Furniture's Holiday Wow Sale. Buy one item, get the second half off. That's right, half off your second item plus free delivery. Wow! Shop the Holiday Wow Sale at Regency Furniture today.
Want to improve your health, energy, and longevity? Discover the secret to better health with Viome. It's the world's most advanced microbiome test, and you can take it from the comfort of your own home. Viome is the only company that uses RNA technology to tell you how your body reacts to food. More than 370 foods, in fact. And food is the key. If you eat and avoid the right ones, food can be your medicine. Viome's AI technology creates a personalized plan that tells you exactly that, because some healthy foods may not actually be good for you. Like 50% of people should avoid spinach. Are you eating right and still unable to lose weight? Feeling moody or having mental fog? Maybe it's spinach. Test and find out. Viome is also the only company that can create customized supplements based on your unique biology to help you improve specific areas of health. Go to Viome.com to learn more and get $110 off any test using code IHEART. Viome, the future of health is here.
With its new look and taste, Dasani is always crisp, clean, and refreshing. So, when thirst calls, answer with the new refreshed taste of Dasani water, now without salt. Learn more at Dasani.com.
Oh, by the way, Ivan's no longer on the project. His wife got a new job, so they're moving across the country. Robin's top researcher is deviating to a new market. This isn't standard. And now we're short-staffed. Who's going to finish all these projects? She needs a cluster of new data analysts, and there's no margin for error. I need Indeed. Indeed you do. Put our matching platform to work so you can spend less time searching and more time connecting with talented candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply. I've always gotten tons of UTIs. Cranberry products never worked for me, and I was desperate for a way to be proactive. I'm Jenna Ryan, CEO and founder of Eucora. We've worked with doctors to develop effective urinary tract health products. Just mix a packet of Eucora with water and drink it when you need support, like right after intimacy. Eucora is helping over 100,000 women stay healthy. Ready to join them? Get 30% off at eucora.com/radio. That's UQORA.com/radio.
Hey, man, you all right? Need me to call 911? No, call Top Dog Law. Get top dollar for your accident at topdoglaw.com. Once again, that's topdoglaw.com.
Spreads, totals, and all the prop bets in between. It's the Gambler.
And I'm back, Sean Barnard on the other side here to close things out for the final 5 minutes. And I do want to end with a little something interesting here. You take a look at the Twitter bio or the X bio of Daryl Morey, the Sixers president of basketball operations, which states that opportunity is not a lengthy visitor. And that is an awfully true quote, and one that I think rings a little bit too true today. Not just for the Philadelphia 76ers, who certainly are the prime time of this conversation here, but I also did want to shine a light on the Philadelphia Phillies, who I have not mentioned yet on this show. It's been a lot of moves in baseball so far. The stove is hot, and the Philadelphia Phillies have sat on the sideline here. Now, What my expectations are at this point are, unfortunately, I do think that there is not going to be nearly the notable move that we all hope for. I frankly went into this offseason from a Phillies perspective with the belief they have to do something to at least keep this World Series window open. That, yes, Bryce Harper is great. Yes, that is a foundational piece of a championship team. This dude is a winner. There's no doubt about the belief in Bryce. Trey Turner, slightly different conversation. That felt like that was the co-star move. And I think even with Trey being better last year, I don't know if we can honestly look ourselves in the eyes and believe that contract was worth it or that was the guy to go all in on. I'm not saying I needed the Phillies to sign Juan Soto for $765 million. I would have loved for them to go and get Kyle Tucker, although I understand the risk as he is a free agent at the end of this year, and then he can walk. And obviously you give those prospects, you give those players, you commit that level of money, and a dude to just walk away is a high risk to take as an organization. But they got to do something, man. Even the Romano, the reliever that they brought in, is buying out of the bargain bin. This is a guy you're hoping for a return season, and he's been very good for stretches, but he also is coming off a really poor season, and a guy that you're basically hoping that the elbow can hang on. I don't understand remotely the logic between this being a bargain bin franchise. You are blessed with the opportunity of having an owner that just wants to win, that does not care about the finances. This is not a situation like so many other franchises where the focus is on the bottom line, the red line, the black line. What's our gain? What's our profit margin here? That is not John Middleton by any means. In my eyes, he is the model for how an owner should look to run a sports team. That the dude cares. He treats it like a fan. You go to a random Phillies game in the middle of, September or whatever it is, and you can find him up in the 300 section, just taking in the baseball game himself. That is awesome to me. He's not in his luxury box. He's not dressed up. He's not stealing camera time for himself. If anything, you'll see him tossing baseballs to fans from the dugout. That's about the access that we have. The dude is how you should look to run a sports team if you are a super rich man that gets to enjoy that privilege right there. But if that is the case, why are you not making the most of that? If you're Dave Dombrowski, if you're making decisions for this overall roster, price shouldn't be your concern either. And I'm not saying you need to spend money just to spend money, but it is strange to me just repetitively how we see this Phillies team getting outbid on guys or seemingly not offering the same level. Kyle Tucker to me was a massive miss. That had to be the guy, and I understand it comes with some risk, but you got to do something here. And I think the brutal reality from a roster construction standpoint is that I think the Alec Boehms and the Crawfords, the prospects, the guys that they believed you could build this intriguing package with doesn't seem to quite have the same appeal to other organizations here. And that's a tough reality. So for this Phillies team, the offseason is not over. I do want to take a deep breath, and I will see the full vision if it fully comes together. But for the time being, way too quiet of a season than I expected to be the case, and do hope that changes soon. Now, to talk about the Sixers team, did opportunity come and go in their visit here? I don't know what the answer to that is just yet. There's certainly reason to believe that it has. I mean, I can't look myself in the eye and believe that, this is the time that Joel has that injury luck. But they kind of has to be the game plan that you lean on. Obviously, it has not happened this year, but really what you're hoping for is that one playoff run. I think a player of Joel Embiid's talent, the caliber of just elite skill that he has, it's rare that you see zero playoff success for a player of that like notoriety. A player that is as talented as Joel typically breaks through at one point. Look down history. Look at Dirk Nowitzki, I think is an awesome example of this. A guy that clearly throughout his career was never able to get over that hump until he was. And I think there's too much brought on about this, like this guy's a loser, this guy can't win. Everyone's a loser until they're not. Nikola Jokic was considered a loser until he wasn't. Giannis Antetokounmpo, could he be a number one until he won a championship? All those conversations change when you get that one chance, but you got to find a way to get one chance. And what I think is especially frustrating about the brutal reality of his body potentially falling apart here is it feels like the roster's finally built for him, that there's finally the available options to lean on. The Paul Georges of the world, the McCains, the Maxis. Gershon Yabusele has been terrific. Caleb Martin is going to win playoff games for this Sixers team. But it's all built around Joel Embiid. If that foundation is cracked, if that guy that all this is leaning on, you're not going to have a very successful season, or however you want to put it. You can have the nicest windows, the nicest painting of a house that you could ever imagine. But if that foundation is cracked, if that isn't laid correctly, the house ain't going to stand very long. And that kind of feels like the case that we're going through with the Sixers team. And again, I don't see an outlook that you can improve this. I don't see a pathway you can go down that gives you a higher chance than basically crossing your fingers and praying. But then we also got to acknowledge this lengthy list of injuries that I started the show reading off with. There also is a point where a guy has to look himself in the mirror and talk about, is this worth it for me? That Joel himself has been open about the level of depression that he has faced, not being able to get back on the floor, all these type of conversations. What does this one do? What is, after coming back from a knee injury, working your way back, fighting, scrapping, hearing all the noise, all the magnifying social media yelling chamber that I'm sure is being taken in, and Joel specifically is an athlete that's more online than most, that can't be the easiest thing in the world to just do. So there are more questions than answers about every one of our own Philadelphia sports teams right now. The Philadelphia Eagles, who have been the sideshow of the week with the Brandon Graham and A.J. Brown show, are somehow the only team that seems to be on that clear path. And I will show a little love to the Flyers, who Matvey Michkov still doing his thing. That organization's moving in the right direction and building things the right way, but still a couple years away, no doubt about it there. But for the Sixers and Phillies, they're at a little bit more of a crucial turning point that I think any of us really realized until we hit it. So we'll see what happens from here. But about as poor of a start to the season you can imagine for this Sixers team, as about as poor of an offseason as or start to the offseason you can imagine for this Philadelphia Phillies team. A lot more questions than answers than I would like to have at this current time. So we'll see how things shake out from here from all parties. I'm going to keep rocking with you guys every Saturday from 11 to 1. We'll be back with Mark Henry Jr. for a normal show next week. He's up in New York doing his thing this week, so toss me the second hour to let me take things the way I wanted it. And here's where we landed on for this week. So hopefully better spirits and good vibes moving forward. But for the time being, a little bit more, I guess, frustrated is the best way to put it moving forward. But either way, appreciate each and one of you guys for tuning into this. Keep it locked as always. We'll be heading back out to Fox Sports Satellite Radio after this. I'm hopping over to DraftKings Network to do some writing for myself. So if you want some NBA player props, want some, DFS plays, anything like that, they will be coming out. You can check my Twitter for that as well. But appreciate each and every one of you guys as always. Be talking to you next time right here on Fox Sports The Gambler. Peace.